There I am. Oh, goodness gracious me. We made it. We made it this morning. And I hope that you're with us. This is Keith Hayes reporting, if that's the word, from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex. But we are a local, not parochial, and we broadcast to the world. And anywhere in the world that you may be. And we know there are a lot of people in various parts of the world that follow us, to join us. And we're very grateful that you do. But here we are with a little bit of stutter, but not too great so far. Not too great so far, he said. Now, in 40 minutes, let's say, we have the two B's, the two barristers who kick off our week and end our week for us with their usual informative chat, but also is slagging one another off, which is highly amusing. Very amusing indeed. And then we have Harry from, I think he's back in France, but we'll have to see. And that takes us through the morning to Suzanne. And I hope that we've got enough clout in the internet this morning, because our new little gizmo isn't working. I wonder why. We can tell that we're going to have that sort of problem. I have no idea. It can only happen to us. So I have to go on, fall back to the other situation, and we know that's not quite powerful enough to satisfy everybody. Anyway, there we go. We'll just have to suck it and see today. There we get a bit of reading. That's good. All right. Let's get off to a gentle start today, shall we? Why not go above Lewis? Yes. And have a little look from above. Well, there we are. That's the town that we know and love and are part of as of this very minute. But it doesn't reflect necessarily what's happening in the rest of the world. So let's take a look at the news headlines, the front pages. And actually, I think it's very disturbing. One of the most disturbing headlines that I have seen since we've been doing this. And the Times says the army is on standby after revolt by armed police. Now, we know there's been a lot of criticism of how the police recruit, what they do, how they train, and their discipline. We are very lucky, and many times I've thumped the desk when listening to the arguments of Republicans, anti-monarchists, anti-House of Lords, you name it, anti the way that we're governed. The governance in this country is excellent, and it stops things like this. That because one of their colleagues has been charged with murder in an incident that goes back some 6 months or so, the armed police turned in their guns, made menacing noises, and indeed started to play up. Immediately, the powers that be called in the army to quell what could have been and could have spread. And this is what most people would worry about: is at a time of major dissatisfaction with everything that's going on, that it could have turned into a real revolt. But the fact of the matter is, the army is the commander-in-chief is the king. So it's very difficult for them to rebel. The police, generally speaking, are fairly decent, but a small group, unhappy with the way things are turning out, have decided to have a go and start at least mutterings about taking on the establishment with armed forces. So the police were called in. And it's a dangerous situation, and I wouldn't write it off just yet. The Daily Telegraph, army is called in as firearm officers put down guns. Does he give us a little bit more detail? The Telegraph quotes a source as saying that there is so much anger among police officers around the decision to charge the unarmed officer with murder. He was charged after unarmed Chris Caber died following a police operation in South London last year. According to the source, officers feel like carrying a gun is just not worth it. Well, it's some disappointment, to say the least. Disappointment. The Guardian. The Met Police requests support from SAS after officers down firearms. Yes, it says that the scale and speed of the protest of Met officers led the Home Secretary to order an emergency review as fears grew that the rebellions could spread further within the Met and around the country. Rebellion by gun cops forces soldiers to step in. Soldiers are on standby. So this is the Express. Soldiers are on standby to cover for armed police who are refusing to carry guns after a fellow officer was charged with murder. Army marksmen will step in full police tackling turmoil. That doesn't make sense. Army marksmen will step in for police tackling terror attacks after Met officers refused to bear weapons. And that was their protest. The Financial Times. Russia gains from oil surge after dodging the G7 price cap. Right, the Russians have gone around loose end or tight end to get back into the oil market, which means that we can now see an extension of the war as Putin is able to afford to support his present troops and the troops that he wants to bring in to enhance his case of being victor in the war with the West, I suppose it is. Yes. It is. The Daily Mail. Right, now it takes a different tack to the story about the armed revolution. It is that rapists are barred from early release. According to the Daily Mail, Rishi Sunak will unveil a plan on crime in the coming weeks, including measures such as barring convicted rapists from securing early release. Well, there's an argument for that, I guess. Those people who believe that corporal punishment is absolutely essential. The Metro. Now, the Metro takes a look at the crisis in hospitals. It says almost 400,000 patients that go to A and E in England will end up waiting 24 hours or longer to be seen. The paper highlights figures of 22-23 from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine and a doctor's comments that longer A and E waits are harmful and increase mortality. The eye. The headline is green target delay will raise cost of living, Sunak warned. This is in relation and reaction to the end of last week, where the story was that Sunak is thinking of either extending or cutting green activities designed to get us to ground zero, I want to say, to zero emissions in 5 years' time. The Daily Mirror. Marcus Rashford jumped out of his car after a crash to check an accident with a Rolls Royce hit another vehicle. His Rolls Royce hit another vehicle and a traffic stand near the club's training ground. I thought they'd make more of a meal of that than they have. The Sun, 8 is great. That's a sporting story. The guts of the story is it was a rash crash. Marcus Rashford was lucky to escape injury after his car collided with another vehicle driven by a 24-year-old woman who was luckily very shaken but unhurt. The Star is it has to be something different, doesn't it? Storm Agnes blasts in. Now, I have to tell you that it's out there right now. The morning is lovely. There is no threat of rain. It's not going to be scorcher, but it's going to hit something like 20 degrees. So we've got a nice day out there. But what does the Star lead with? Storm Agnes blasts in, it says. The Guardian reports that, let's see what the Guardian has to say about this one particular. Now where do we go to? Well, let's go back to me. What a lovely surprise. Just let me comment on the issue of throwing the key away if rapists come up for early release on parole. Whether in fact I approve of that or not, the difference between the two parties, the Conservatives and Labour, often boils down to how hard-nosed one party or the other can be on legal situations. And often we, and I say we because it's very loose, we suggest that you should exactly do what Rishi Sunak is being urged to do, and that is not put out or shave off any time from the sentences that have been held on serious sexual assault. As it is always controversial when anybody suggests going further right in terms of the issues of anti-law, breaking the law, and so on. And yet, the liberal left cannot come up with too much of a situation where they curb excesses. Crime is one of those areas where we seem to be out of control again. So how do you do it? Liberal legislation doesn't seem to have worked. Let me just adjust myself in my seat. And it's 8:20, by the way, for those people who are worried about the time. Yeah, I know. I often get it wrong, but this time I'm checking. It's accurate. It's 8:20. It's coming down from the satellite. Goodness gracious me! One time, all you had was grandfather's clock. Tick tock, tick tock. Right now, what we're talking about? We're talking about the issue of going easy on sentences, or if not going easy, allowing those people who are victims to see that justice is done by the perpetrators being sent to prison on a fixed term, and that they spend all that term, instead of time off for good behavior and time off for this and time off for that, is that they serve the full term. And this is nowhere further from reality. It's on the contrary, really. It looks and it is possible with present legislation to make sure that the criminals, particularly when it comes to sex crimes, can stay in prison or be kept in prison for entire length of their sentence as handed down by the judge. So not so hot when we get to cracking on something like this, then the lines will be drawn. You can guarantee that there's going to be hot debate about this, because there are lots of people who believe that throwing away the key is not the answer. So that's the situation there. Let's now, because it's another 15 minutes yet before we go and try and rouse the boys from their slumbers, and I believe that they're going to talk about Carlingford Lough, which actually is on the border with Northern Ireland. It's in the south. It is on the border with Northern Ireland, and just along the division, in fact, is called Narrow Water. I can't remember the date. It would have been in the 1970s that the British Army were lulled into turning up in the Northern Ireland side of Strangford Lough, Carlingford Lough, I take it back. And they were sitting ducks for IRA gunmen who sat on the other side of the loch. Narrow Water, as it's called, and just picked them off. It was a huge disaster for us. I'm going to say us, yeah, and a really good result for the IRA. And we all have agreed that these things shouldn't happen. But if we're not actually going to put the foot down or throw these people into a slammer, how are we going to handle it? It's back to narrow water, and back to those awful days when it was open and armed conflict. And perhaps that's a good example of what can happen if gun control gets out of control. The authorities, and for that matter, other people, can use the full power of the law to throw these people into Huskiao and then throw away the key. So that is where things curdle, because there is bound to be a lot of anticipation about the use of incarceration to try and deal with rapists. Now, we've got 5 minutes or so before we go to the two Bs. I don't know whether we've got anything sweet enough and short enough. Well, I don't think I'm going to take the chance because we're so close to going on the air. It's when I start to faff around that I faff around that I cock things up, and then what was meant to make us first with the news and all that sort of stuff, it actually makes us sloppy and easily making mistakes. So that's life behind bars. And that was a bit of a ramble, wasn't it? But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. Okie dokie. What I was looking for was anything that might have appealed. But I am not sure that we've got. Well, I'll tell you what. We've just got time to do Jack and Jake's Follies. We've shown it frequently, but it does bear playing again.
I always find it strange how two people can experience and view a place in completely different ways.
Jack Fuller was born into money, and at the age of 20 he moved to Brightling in East Sussex after inheriting land and a fortune from his uncle Rose. At the age of 22, Fuller became the Member of Parliament for Southampton. Fuller lost his seat after a vicious row over his support for slavery. This was the time when he began to focus more on his estate and his love of combining art and science.
I moved down from Glasgow to Sussex when I was 9 years old, and that would be in 2003. I first saw the Follies when my granddad was driving me through Brightling, and I remember looking at them and just asking him what these strange buildings were.
Jack Fuller was affectionately known as Mad Jack by local residents who did not understand his fascination with useless buildings. A folly is a building with no purpose other than decoration. The first of Jack's 6 follies was the summer house. Jack was a keen gambler, and he entered into a wager that he could see the spire of Dallington Church from his window. Upon realising that he was mistaken, he quickly constructed the Sugarloaf to very effectively mimic the church spire.
I looked out of my girlfriend's window and I saw this strange building in the distance, and I asked her, what is this strange building? And she replied that it was the Sugarloaf. The first time I went, I remember I took my girlfriend there and I gave her a love letter.
The Rotunda Temple was built to hold artwork, most notably paintings commissioned from J.M.W. Turner. Jack was a philanthropist, and during an economic depression he hired hundreds of local labourers to build a huge wall around his estate. However, the wall did not stop trespassers.
We all thought the temple was full of art, and I was a bit shocked to find out that there was none. All I found when I first went in was graffiti left from the Canadian Air Force that was stationed on the estate during the Second World War.
The temple is the motif for the internationally renowned Breitling Horse Trials, which brings in competitors and spectators from all walks of life. The Hermit's Watchtower was built so that Jack could survey his land and have views of the sea.
The tower was my special place. I used to go there when I was feeling a bit down or I had to clear my mind. As you go up the stairs on the right hand side, my girlfriend's initials are still there. Mine, well, are not there anymore. When I was feeling alone, I would go to the top of the tower, I would lie down, I would stare through the open roof. I'd wait for nightfall, and then I would look at all the stars. I would wonder what my place on this earth is. Why I was here, and I would also wonder why the Follies are here. And it dawned on me that the Follies aligned almost with the stars, and it feels like some of them are there to replicate Orion's belt, others are there to be individual stars, like the observatory would be Betelgeuse. I've heard some people argue that the observatory is not a folly as it serves a purpose, but Don't all the follies serve a purpose? They serve our local history, our culture. When I first came to Sussex from Glasgow, I was such an outsider. People had no idea what I was saying, and I had to get something to point me in the right direction.
The obelisk dominates the landscape and is the second highest point in Sussex.
I remember looking up at the needle and realizing that it pierces the vast, uninterrupted sky.
Jack Fuller commissioned the pyramid to be his mausoleum 24 years before his death. This immense structure draws attention away from the Thomas a Becket Church, in whose graveyard it stands.
I've heard that Jack was buried in the pyramid sitting up in his armchair, with a glass of claret and a roast chicken dinner in front of him. The follies are all focal points, but don't let them fool you. Their place in the landscape belies their size and their distance. In the beginning I was hungry to consume them, and I had rushed to each one in turn. But a short distance turned into a mile, a run into a trek. At last, I grew to love the surroundings and adopted the follies as guides rather than destinations.
Jack Fuller was respected by many as a squire who, at a time of extreme poverty, when soldiers were returning from the Napoleonic War, did what he could to provide employment and prevent revolution. He was ridiculed by others for his views on slavery and his obsession with erecting follies while people were going hungry.
Fuller's follies are an important part of my life and have helped me to find my place. I know many people have followed this path before I have, and I love nothing better than bringing new people to experience them and to fall in love like I did.